Well, good morning, friends. Good morning. As Sam said, my name is Charlie. I'm one of the pastors here, and I have the just delight to preach and bring God's word this morning. And we're continuing our series through the book of Proverbs. And today, the subject we're talking about is neighbors. And if you notice, the title is "Your Neighbors Need You." Now, that might make you feel different things. Need is an interesting word. Some of us feel like, I don't need anyone. Some of us might assume, well, the people around me don't seem to need anybody. But I want to kind of put that aside for a second. We're going to address that. Because we all have needs. Every single one of us, right? We all have all kinds of needs. Needs for connection, needs for support, needs for, provision, all kinds of things. Every one of us is faced with certain needs. But the world we live in and the way in which needs are often addressed, the reality is, in this technologically driven age where there's an app, where there's a service, where there's a subscription that fulfills some kind of need, every human need in the world we live in seems like it could be outsourced. There's some service. There's some institution. There's some app that can fulfill this particular need that I have. If we need something, if we need, a product, where do we go? Amazon Prime. And I know I'm not the only one who uses it in this room. You get your immediate shipping. If we need food, there's, Grubhub, or there's Instacart, where we can have food delivered right to us. If there's a need for human connection, there's all these social media websites, and there's dating apps. There's all kinds of ways where we can fulfill that particular need. If we need entertainment, there's YouTube and Netflix. Or if things get really, really desperate, if we're really just down on things and need help, there are social services and programs to help step in. We need help with our kids. There's schools. There's sports. There's after-school programs. And look, friends, I'm not trying to down any of these things. There's a benefit to having these things. These things are here for us to use and enjoy. However, if we live under this assumption, we look around and we say, okay, well, it seems like these people have everything that they ever need, and if they need something, they can ask somebody else. They can go to something else to get that. I'm not really needed here. There's nothing I can contribute to this person's life. Or, kind of in the extreme, it's not really my problem. It's not my responsibility. And I want to challenge that. If there's anything that can happen this morning, is just to question that premise. That as we look around and the people that we're located around, and really when we talk about neighbors, that can include everybody that we come in contact with, but I'm going to primarily focus on our literal neighbors, the people we live next door to. If we look around and say, well, it looks like these people have everything that they need, it's possible that they have a fundamental, deep need that you can actually fulfill, that you can actually help meet. And really, out the gate, as we just heard earlier, Darnell read out of Romans 13. Paul says this, owe no one anything except to love each other. Which is really funny how he ordered that sentence, because he's like, you don't really owe anyone anything, but you should love them, which pretty much means you owe them a lot. You have to step in a lot of different ways and show love and care and concern for them. And that's an obligation. That's not an option. That you and I, as followers of Jesus, as Christians, are called and commanded to love our neighbor. In fact, as Jesus would say, and Paul says here, it's one of the primary commandments of God. It sums up many of God's commands: loving your neighbor, caring for them, which includes meeting their needs. Now, Proverbs talks a lot about neighbors. And the Bible talks about how you and I are to love our neighbors. We obviously do not have time to cover everything in every single verse. But there are a few that we're going to grab that I think helps us take a step towards loving the people we find ourselves living around. First is that we're called to speak life to our neighbors. Starting with our words, starting with how we speak about and to our neighbors, we are called to speak life. Proverbs 11, verse 12 says this: "Whoever derides their neighbor has no sense, but one who has understanding holds their tongue." I think intuitively as human beings, we recognize when something's different. Right? As kids, we do those games where there's two images placed next to each other, and the challenge is spot the difference. And a child can notice those things. It just intuitively, we recognize and understand when something's different, and especially if there's a flaw, or if the difference we see doesn't quite fit the mold that we're used to, especially if it's something that annoys us or frustrates us, and especially if it offends us and hurts us. We notice those things. You don't need to teach somebody to recognize those things. It's intuitive. We recognize when there are these differences and frustrations and even hurts and offenses. And when we recognize those things, we look around, we can intuitively start to think, okay, I've seen these things, I know these things, I just feel like I need to air this out. I need to talk about this with somebody. I need to share my concerns. I need to share my hurts and my feelings with other people. Now, Sam did a wonderful sermon just a few weeks ago to talking about our words. And that includes how we talk about other people, which includes gossip and slander. So I'm not going to belittle that point that he did such a good job airing out for us. But I want to just camp for just a moment, because I think when we look around, especially in the neighborhoods that we live in, the people that live there, it's so easy to just recognize the differences and think the proper next step is to kind of share our concerns or our frustrations with other people. And it could be small things. The unkept lawn of that person in your neighborhood. The grass, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, okay, but come on, man. Don't you see all the other lawns in our neighborhood? Or the weeds in the garden? Or maybe it's the house where the curtains are always closed. You don't quite know what's going on in there. Maybe it's the house with 5 cars in the driveway and a 4-bedroom home. Maybe it's the family that just doesn't quite look like everybody else in the neighborhood. There are all kinds of things that you and I can notice, and our tendency and step can be just talk about those things with other people. What Proverbs warns us is that when we are quick to do that, we might be saying things, saying, I've seen enough, I see what I need to see, I know what I should know, and I feel like it's now time to make a judgment. It's now time to declare something about those people. There might be things we just don't understand and don't know yet. And someone who recognizes that holds their tongue. There's something that might be going on that I just don't know. And friends, I'll put myself on the table because I was very convicted by this personally. Anna and I, when we lived in San Diego, we lived in apartments. We lived in different apartments around San Diego. So if you've ever lived in an apartment, every wall, ceiling, and floor is shared. You're sharing all of this space with other people. And so we met and would live next to all kinds of different people. In the last place we lived in San Diego, we had a neighbor that, I'll be honest, was hard to love. This was a woman who lived alone. She was on the bottom floor. We were on the top floor just next to the one that was directly above hers. Next door to us, who was the neighbors that were directly above them, or above her, had a young daughter. And she would run around, sometimes late at night, And this particular neighbor that was hard to love, her reaction, what she thought was best, was to literally take a broom handle and bang the ceiling, yelling and screaming, sometimes screaming profanities. And this got really, really tense. This would happen all throughout the day. And so, of course, those people started responding in their own ways. So it was like we were in the midst of just this big war between these two neighbors. And I particularly took offense to this woman. I said, come on, like, don't you recognize that children run around and things? And, why would you respond that way? And I got so frustrated and angry. And Anna, who's my wife, experiencing the same things, I'm sharing this with her. I'm just airing out all my frustrations, all my annoyances. And she responds in the best way that just cut me to my core. She says, she needs Jesus. She needs the Lord. It stopped me in my tracks because after that point, it didn't cure me of all my annoyances and frustrations, but it gave me a different perspective. There could be all things going on in her life that I have no idea. The fact that she's alone, she's lived this life, and the fact that she's responding this way, there could be all kinds of reasons, not to justify it, not to support it, but to enter in with compassion. And it gave me a totally different perspective for her. And it challenged me on what I should do instead and how I should use my words when I'm annoyed with someone else. And I think a best start for all of us is to pray. To pray for them. God knows everything that's going on in their life. He knows what they need. You might think you know everything about them because you've seen everything. You have enough information of what you see and observe, but there could be all things going on in their life that you just don't understand. And a great first step is to begin praying for them. Lord, meet their needs. Lord, help them. Lord, provide and care for them. And I want to leave with this question. And again, this is just as convicting for me. Are you more prone to judge the state of your neighbor's house than you are to pray for the state of their heart? It's easy. We recognize, we see the things that annoy us. But there's a different step to take in using our words and in how we see other people, even those that frustrate, annoy, or make us concerned. The next thing we see in Proverbs is that we are called to also step in and serve. We serve our neighbors. That they all have all kinds of needs that we are called as Christians to step in and help and serve. Now, the one that seems maybe not obvious, but one that all of us are called to is to the poor, to those who don't have the things that you and I have, to those who aren't able to provide for themselves in the ways you and I are able to provide for ourselves. Proverbs says, whoever despises his neighbor is a sinner, but blessed is he who is generous to the poor. And all throughout the Bible, there's a specific and special focus on those who cannot provide for themselves, who cannot care for themselves in the ways that you and I can, or many of us can. And as Christians, we are invited and called to step in and provide and help. Now, I recognize some of us live in communities where everyone seems to have what they need. They have their provisions, they have their home, they have their jobs. And so how can we fulfill and step in this way? Well, it's just as Sam announced that one of the ministries we help, support, and provide for is Sunday Breakfast Mission, which is serving the impoverished families of Wilmington and caring for them and stepping in to help with their needs. And we don't want to just provide the funds for them. We also want to step in and help in different ways, which is why we're doing this backpack school drive for each and every one of us to recognize that even though in our immediate neighborhood there might not be people that fit the mold of being, poor or impoverished, Wilmington's, 12 minutes away. That there are plenty of families there that Sunday Breakfast Mission is helping. We want, as a church, to make sure we're stepping in and fulfilling this call to care for the poor. But not just, it could be easy to look around us and again see our neighbors and our friends and say, well, it seems like they have everything they need. How can I serve them? How can I care for them? But Proverbs, puts that forward to us. It says, do not say to your neighbor, go and come again tomorrow, and I will give it when you have it with you. Do not plan evil against your neighbor who dwells trustingly beside you. That this is this picture of someone who comes and says, hey, I had this need, and don't say, well, I'll do it later or I'll do it another time. Fulfill it. Step in and help. Now, I'm sure many of you, if your neighbor came to your door and said, hey, I have this need, most, if not many of you, would step in and say, absolutely, I will help you. But I think there's another step to take, and not just assume as we look around where we live, and we look at the people and say, well, they have a home, it seems like they have a steady job, it seems like they got a family, it seems like everything is therefore okay, and I'm not really needed here. Again, friends, there might be things you just don't know about their life. It might seem like they have everything, but they're incredibly lonely and desperate for connection. It might seem like from the outside their family's put together, but inside there's chaos, and there's anger, there's animosity, and a marriage that's on the rocks. It might seem like their family is put together, but they're just struggling to know how to care for their kids. They just don't know how to parent and how to love and how to help, and they're trying all these different things. It might be just baggage and anxiety and fear that they've been carrying with all their life, and they're trying all kinds of things to get security and safety and recognition and respect, and all of it is not fulfilling. And you know what it's like. You know what it's like to struggle. You know what it's like to have needs. You know what it's like to have relational problems. You know what it's like to struggle if you've raised kids or if you have kids. You know what it's like, all the problems and issues of parenting. You know what it's like to carry burdens. You know what it's like to have fear and anxiety and worries. You know what it's like to just sin and make mistakes. And you could be the person that can step in to help and support in their deepest needs. Don't just look around in your neighborhood and say, well, everything seems to be in order. You may not know that. There may be someone right next to you that needs a friend, that needs to be loved and cared for, that needs help supporting and caring for their relationships and their family. And you might be able to provide that for them and step in and help them in that. But not just are we there to serve. The Proverbs actually talks about how we should, in our relationships and our connections, even with our neighbors, be willing to receive service. Be willing to lean on their help and support. Proverbs says this in Proverbs 27:10, it says, do not forsake your friend and your father's friend, and do not go to your brother's house in the day of your calamity. Better is a neighbor who is near than a brother who is far away. Anna and I, we've been just so blessed and thankful for the neighborhood we live in. And we've just developed certain friends, and we've really enjoyed, and there's one particular couple that we've just really enjoyed getting to know. They're just really sweet. We love hanging out with them. We've gone on double dates with them. We'd had them over. They've watched our kids. They've just become dear friends to us. And they're not Christians. And we pray for them, daily and regularly, that they would know what we know. But we've also just enjoyed the space and the time just hanging out with them. And when Jolie was born, she's our youngest daughter. She was born on May 10th of this year. So if you've had kids, there's lots of needs that you have, and many of you stepped in and helped. We felt so loved and cared for by all of you. But when she was born, they would text us regularly. The husband would text me and say, hey, I'm at the store. What do you need? And I could have been like, no, that's my job. I'm the Christian. I'm the one that's supposed to help other people. I'm the one that's supposed to serve. but not giving them the opportunity to bless me and love us. And then the wife, she dropped off groceries one day, and she told Anna, she says, hey, I'm going to be on the phone. I'm going to make a bunch of work calls. Why don't I take Jolie? I'm just going to be walking around the house anyway. I'll take Jolie. Why don't you just take a shower, have a moment to yourself? And Anna was just so blessed by that we've had just the privilege and opportunity not just to serve our neighbors, but to be served by them, to recognize that God has put those people in a place potentially to serve you. And sure, it might not be a desperate moment. It might not be, there's real issues or problems in your life. It could just be, hey, can I borrow something? I need this ingredient. Do you have it? I need this tool, or I need help with this. Do you have a moment? And who knows, that can create opportunity and moments of connection and a mutual trust and a friendship that God willing, as we are praying for our neighbors, that will just continue to lead them to Jesus. And that's the biggest need, friend. If anything, recognizing where you are and your place and your calling for the life of your neighbors is to meet their deepest need. Because all of us have all kinds of needs, but there are the deepest ones. The deepest need to be loved, the need to be known, the need for life that lasts forever. And the only one who can give that to them is God. The only one to give life and love and to know us in our deepest ways is God. And yet, God invites each and every one of us to be part of that for other people. God could easily say, everyone who's saved is saved now. No need for us to go out, no need for us to evangelize, no need for us to invite. Everyone is saved, everything is great. He could have done that. But he's called each and every one of us to participate in that calling and mission, that we are called to save our neighbors. Proverbs 12:26 says this, one who is righteous is a guide to his neighbor, but the way of the wicked leads them astray. That word for guide is a military word. Another way to translate almost like a reconnaissance of looking ahead, of scouting ahead for someone, which someone who's in that position is well aware of where the dangerous parts are, where the places are that they need to go, the best routes forward. And Proverbs is saying is the one who's righteous is a guide to his neighbor. That God calls all people to himself, and the only one who can give others the life, the joy, the peace that everyone needs, whether you recognize it or not. He's the only one who can give it to them. That Jesus himself said in John 14, he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. But God has also invited us to be part of that. You might know the famous verse, which many Christians call the Great Commission. Jesus, after he was resurrected, before he was ascended into heaven, he gave this command. In Matthew 28, he says, go and make disciples. And that's a command for all of us, to go and make disciples. Jesus came to seek and save the lost, and God is inviting us into that mission. Go and make disciples, which includes the care and love and support that we show each other. We're all disciples if we believe in Jesus. And we all need that support and continuing to be made more and more like Jesus, continuing to grow up as disciples of Jesus. So that's part of it. But it's not exclusive to that. that all of us in fulfilling that are called and invited to go out, go find them, go make disciples. I heard one person, we think of evangelism and it terrifies a lot of us because we think, I have to have these conversations, I have to have these answers, I need to say this thing or that thing. And we think of those who have, as the Bible says, there are people that have the gift of evangelism. There are people that just have that special gift. They can go to the grocery store, and by the time they've checked their groceries out, they've shared Jesus with 5 people. I mean, it's not a problem for them. They're just grabbing people left and right, talking to them about Jesus. Most of us don't have that gift. There's like 4% of people, 3% of people that have that gift. But the 96% of the rest of us still have the command to go. We're still commanded by God to go. I heard this quote by Frederick Buechner. He's a novelist. He says, "You find your calling where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet." He's talking about vocation, so I don't want to misquote him. But to carry that further, what gives you more gladness, or what should give you more joy and satisfaction and peace than God himself? As we read earlier, Jesus came to earth to rescue you, to save you. And if you believe in that, you have life forever. You have joy that lasts forever. You have hope that goes beyond the grave. You are loved in the deepest way imaginable. That's what you have right now if you are believing in Jesus. But if people don't have that, if they don't believe in Jesus, what's the alternative? What's left for them? It's darkness. It's separation. It's being lost forever. And nothing else can save them from that except Jesus. There's no middle ground. And friends, if you are living next to somebody who doesn't know Jesus, that's their future. Unless we recognize that perhaps God has put us there for them. God has put you, perhaps, in your neighborhood and where you live because there's someone there who doesn't know Jesus. Paul in Acts 19, he's talking to a bunch of pagans, and he's preaching to them about who God is and what God has done for them. And he talks about how God created all things, and he's even placed us in very particular places. He says this in chapter 17. He says, God having determined and allotted periods and the boundaries of our dwelling place, that they should seek God and perhaps feel their way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each of us. What he's saying there is God in his sovereignty and his plan has placed each and every human being in particular places and in particular seasons. And he's saying that God's big plan for everyone is that they would know him. And he places these markers and people around their location for them to know that he is not far from them, that his grace and his mercy is not far. And friends, what if you were the one that has that grace to share with other people? You were the one next to your neighbor who in their heart is far from God, but in reality, God's grace is near. God's mercy and care and love for them is near, and you can be the one to share that with them. You know, and it starts with our own heart. This is something I've been praying about just in this last season of a burden. Do you have a burden for the lost that live in your neighborhood? Do you have a burden recognizing what their future is, even if they have everything that this world could offer? That their future afterlife and what's there for them. Do you have a burden for that? God invites us to have that burden that he has. That the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. That God desires all people to come to know him, and he wants us to have that desire. Now, you might be hearing all of this and say, man, Charlie, I live in a different neighborhood than you do. And I'm sure that's true. I don't want to say, like, you need to be exactly like Ann and I have. We recognize our place. We recognize our neighborhood might look different than yours. But I will say it's not as though we kind of moved in and there was this culture and lifestyle and we just sort of rode the wave. It took a lot of intentionality. And I should say, I keep saying us, but really it was my wife. I mean, my wife loves this kind of stuff. And none of this is I'm saying you should be exactly like my wife. And maybe there's a different step for you, but I think a great first step for many of us is to begin praying. To begin praying for one of your neighbors. To begin praying for their heart. And to begin praying for how God might be inviting you to be a part of their story. And it might be someone who you've never met before. Friends, you are praying to the God of the universe who created all things out of nothing, who stepped across the cosmos to save you. I have a hunch that he can arrange a meeting between you and your neighbor. I have a hunch. A great way to start taking action towards this, Dave Ferguson, he's a pastor. He wrote this book called Bless. It stands for an acronym for Begin with Prayer, Listen, Eat, Story, and Serve. It's a great resource. And they has a whole entire ministry. In our series on hospitality, Making Room, we talked a lot about this, so I don't want to belittle this point. But they actually have an app. It's called the Bless app. If you guys love technology and love kind of reminders and things, this is a great resource. You download the app and you put your information. There's a free version. There's, like everything, there's a paid subscription version if you want to do that. But if you do the free version, you put your information in, it locates your home, and then around your home, it puts your neighbors and their names for you. And it can create a track for you to start with prayer and remind you for that. Some of you love that kind of stuff and are going to jump on this right away. Some of you are going to call your senator because you're worried that other people now know your name and you want your name eliminated from the list. This is totally legal. This is not like they work for the CIA. These are public databases that they have access to. But it's a wonderful resource for you to be able to understand the place God's put you is intentional. God did not make a mistake to give you the home and put you in the neighborhood that He put you in. Maybe as you walk around your neighborhood, instead of listening to a podcast or to music, why don't you pray? Take one house. Pray for the people in there. Pray that God would meet their needs. And pray for opportunity. Imagine, friends, if each and every one of us was doing that, what God would do. Let's pray.